Alright, so now I'm going to talk about hatch. So if you look at the same file in top view, if I go to hatch examples, and I turn this on, it brings up a few squares that are down here. So first let's talk about hatch before we take this into Illustrator. So I'm going to type in the command hatch. For now, let's see, do boundary yes. I'm going to select this object, hit enter. Or actually, let's do boundary no. Select this object, hit enter, make it into a solid, hit OK. And essentially what a hatch is, it's just essentially just a pattern that fills inside this object. In this case, this pattern is just completely solid. I can select it, I can delete it, type in hatch again. Boundary equals no. I can say I want a different type of patch pattern and hit OK. I can have I have this thing made up of a bunch of little squares. I can change the scale of it after the fact. I can select it, go to properties, hatch, scale 10. I can rotate it. Or I could also select it again and just go make it a solid again. Okay, so this time we're going to go to the second one. Again, type in hatch. The only difference between the first one and the second one, all these curves were were all joined. These were all individual. But it's still, once you selected the four boundaries, it recognized it as a hatch. These have overlapping lines. But if I do hatch, I select all of them, it's asking me where it wants me to hatch this object. So I can just click inside, hit enter, make it a solid, and I've now hatched that object. The next one I can go type in hatch. If I try to click inside this one, nothing's happening. The reason why, if I zoom in on this top corner, there's an opening. And essentially the way the hatch works is it tries to find the enclosed, like the enclosed area. So in this case, there is no enclosed area, so it can't actually hatch these lines. But I can just use a shortcut with my fillet command. I can say fillet with a radius of 0. Click that line, and it connects those two. And now I can type in hatch. And it should hatch those objects. With the next two, again, type in hatch. Select boundary yes. So what it's going to ask me to do, the next option is combine regions. I'll say combine regions yes. I'll click all four of these, make it a solid, hit OK. And then I'm going to do hatch again. Select all these lines, and combine regions equals no. And again, make it into a solid. So on this one, I said combine regions equals yes. So when you have that as an option, any part of your hatch that touches another hatch, it'll make it into one large hatch. This one I said no, so it's keeping each individual square, each individual boundary as its own individual hatch. So just using these as an example, I'm going to leave this one as solid hatches. I'm going to turn this one into a different type of a hatch. I'll turn it into squares, make it a different scale, and set base at the center. And essentially what I want to do now with these is select these and go to File, Export Selected. I'll save this as an Illustrator file. I'll do a snapshot. So when I take this into Illustrator, this one looks okay because these were solid hatches, but this one was not. This one, it's not recognizing it as that hatch pattern as in Rhino. The main reason why is Illustrator does not understand hatches. Since technically this is not a solid hatch in Rhino, it'll come into Illustrator, and the reason why it's understanding this is it's understanding it as a filled object. And obviously I could always change the color once it's in Illustrator. But if I want to bring in a hatch object into Illustrator, what I need to do is in Rhino, I need to explode it. And normally you do not want to explode hatches, because once you explode a hatch, it turns it into a series of lines, and it's no longer a hatch that you can come over here and select. But in this case, I'm going to explode it. So now it's just a bunch of individual lines. Just so I can select it, go to File, Export Selected. I'll save it as an Adobe Illustrator file, snapshot. And before I do anything else, I'm going to come back in here in Rhino and just hit Edit Undo. So I just undid the explode, so now it's a hatch again. But since I exported it after I exploded it, I should now have the correct hatch. I'll just delete these lines. I should now have the correct hatch in Illustrator. And again, it comes in its own layer because it was in its own layer in Rhino. So I can select these, change the line weight, select these, change the line weight or the color. And now I can start to use hatch in Rhino as a way to start to make my drawings for Illustrator.